What happens when the mind rebels against itself? When thought fractures, behavior betrays, and emotions spiral into darkness. For thousands of years, humans have asked, what causes mental suffering? Is it sin, spirits, biology, or society itself? The journey to understand psychopathology, the science of mental disorders, is not just a clinical timeline. It is a reflection of our deepest fears, evolving beliefs, and a world slowly learning to treat pain not with punishment but with insight. Today, we trace that journey. This is the historical development of psychopathology from ancient mysticism to modern neuroscience. Let's begin. Part 1. Ancient World, the Supernatural Era. In ancient times, mental illness was rarely seen as illness. It was a spiritual affliction, a curse, a possession, or divine punishment. In Mesopotamia, madness was linked to the wrath of gods or invasion by evil spirits. The Egyptians believed the heart, not the brain, was the seat of thought. Shamans and priests were the healers, using exorcisms, chants, and rituals to cast out demons. The supernatural model of psychopathology framed mental suffering not as a medical condition but as a moral or mystical crisis. Treatment? Often brutal. Isolation. Bleeding. Trepanning, boring holes in the skull to release spirits. But even then, something deeper was forming, a recognition that the mind could suffer independently from the body. Part 2. Greek and Roman philosophy. The naturalistic shift. Enter the thinkers. Hippocrates, the father of Western medicine, was among the first to propose that mental illness had natural causes. He rejected demons and instead introduced the humoral theory. Imbalances in the four bodily fluids, blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, caused disease, including mental disturbance. Melancholia, depression, was attributed to excess black bile. Mania, to too much yellow bile. This was a seismic shift. For the first time, biology and brain function were linked to mental health. Plato and Aristotle later emphasized reason, emotion, and the soul, laying early groundwork for psychodynamic thought. Treatment focused on diet, rest, music, and logic, a kinder, if still rudimentary, approach. Part 3. The Dark Ages. Return to the supernatural. As empires fell and the Middle Ages rose, Europe returned to fear. With the rise of religious orthodoxy, the supernatural model reclaimed dominance. Mental illness was once again equated with sin, heresy, or witchcraft. Women with schizophrenia were branded witches. Seizures were seen as demonic possession. Treatment involved torture, exorcism, and execution. Asylums began to appear not for healing, but for containment. The most infamous Bedlam Hospital in London became a place of horror where patients were chained, beaten, and displayed to the public for entertainment. Humanity's understanding of the mind regressed into cruelty. But not forever. Part 4. The Renaissance and Enlightenment. The first humanists. The 16th to 18th centuries sparked intellectual rebellion. Philosophers like Descartes reignited the debate about the mind-body connection, while early physicians challenged mystical beliefs. Most importantly, figures like Philippe Pinel in France and William Tuke in England introduced the moral treatment movement. Patients were unchained. Asylums became therapeutic communities. Kindness, structure, and conversation replaced cruelty. This was the first true psychological reform where mental illness was seen not as moral failure but as human suffering in need of care. Part V. The 19th century. Birth of modern pathology. Now came structure science, systems, and classification. Emil Kraepelin developed the first diagnostic categories, including what we now call bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. He believed mental illnesses were biological and hereditary. His work laid the foundation for the DSM, our current diagnostic manual. Sigmund Freud emerged with a radically different view. Mental illness arises from unconscious conflict, often rooted in childhood trauma or repressed desires. His psychoanalytic theory introduced concepts like the id, ego, superego, and defense mechanisms. Freud's influence was profound. Even those who rejected him were shaped by him. He opened the door to a psychological understanding of suffering beyond biology. Part VI, 20th Century Theoretical Explosion. The 20th century saw a revolution in psychological models of psychopathology. Behaviorists like Watson and Skinner argued that mental disorders were learned behaviors. Humanists like Carl Rogers saw psychopathology as a block in self-actualization due to conditions of worth. Cognitive theorists like Beck emphasized distorted thinking patterns, and the biological model surged with advances in neurochemistry and psychopharmacology. This century gave us the first antipsychotic and antidepressant drugs, cognitive behavioral therapy (CBT), standardized manuals like DSM and ICD, and a new respect for neuroscience, brain imaging, and genetics. We moved from guessing to mapping the mind. Part 7. Modern Era, the Integrative Approach. Today, we no longer see psychopathology through a single lens. The modern approach is biopsychosocial, biological, brain chemistry, genetics, hormones, psychological, trauma, thought patterns, personality, social, relationships, culture, poverty, stigma. We recognize that mental illness is real and treatable. It is shaped by context, not just chemistry, and that compassion must guide every diagnosis, every treatment, every conversation. We're also rethinking who defines illness, shifting power back to lived experience, cultural context, and human dignity. The history of psychopathology is not just a record of science, it's a mirror of how we've chosen to see the human mind. As sacred, as sinful, as sick, as salvageable. And now as a complex, beautiful, wounded, and resilient system worthy of both study and empathy. We've come far from exorcisms to empathy, from fear to frameworks. But there is still so much to learn. If this exploration moved you, follow Livora for your daily spark of self-growth, purpose, and emotional strength. Stay connected, we post every single day to guide you on this journey. Because the more you grow, the more your relationships thrive. This is Livora, where emotional intelligence meets everyday life. Let's grow together.